Greetings, horror sci-fi and Tim Burton fans. Drew here from Horror Sci-Fi and Beyond, and we got an episode for you where requested by our very own singing wizard, Jack Harper. That movie is Tim Burton's Big Fist. Yeah, he just texted me one day and he's like, "Hey, can
Mm.
we review Big Fist?" And I had a couple other movies I wanted to review in mind, but I'm like, "Sure, man, let's do it. I've never seen it, and it sounds interesting." So we're gonna
Oh,
review
you'd
it.
never seen it? You'd never seen Big Fish before
No,
this review? Oh,
no,
nice. So this is
yeah,
first time seeing it. Wow. Okay.
yeah. And the other voice in the room is the man, the myth, the legend, Eric White. How's it going?
Going good. Hello, everyone.
And how are you, Mr. Singing Wizard?
Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah,
Just chilling.
yeah. You ready to review some Big Fist?
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. This movie is all
Eh,
it's a good one to review because it's different, but
yeah,
it's a perfect like family movie too. And by the time
sure.
we're yeah, when we're posting this, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so it's a perfect kind of movie for that.
Well, and it's one of
Yeah.
those things where I felt like, we reviewed all these sort of grisly movies on the channel.
Mm,
I
Hmm.
wanted to do a nice movie
right.
that still fits
Something a
within
little
our
hope.
wheelhouse,
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
right. But yeah, man. So I just get straight to the plot summary according to the Internet Movie Database for Big Fest. A frustrated son tries to determine the fact from fiction in his dying father's life.
In telling the story of my father's life, it's impossible to separate fact from the fiction, the man from the myth. The best I can do is to tell it the way he told me.
If there was one thing you can say about that broom,
was that I was intended for larger things. I was the biggest thing Ashton had ever seen.
From the imagination of director Tim Burton,
most men, they'll tell you a story straight through. It won't be complicated, but it won't be interesting either.
Did you ever think that maybe you're not too big, but maybe this town is just too small?
All right, Jackson, we'll start with you. What is your overall thoughts about Big Fist?
Well, I saw that this movie came out when I was in college. I would have been 20 when it came
Hmm.
out. I was really excited about it because at that point, Tim Burton, except for, like Planet of the Apes, was
Which had
was
just come out, right? Like the one right before this,
two
wasn't it? Planet of the
years.
Apes?
Yeah, 2 years
Yeah.
before, which that one wasn't good. But
Yeah.
he was still on kind of a hot streak. He had made a lot of movies that I really
Hmm.
enjoyed. And so I was excited to see this one. It looked like it was sort of a different thing for him. And it
Hmm.
was. But at the time, though, I don't think I was really mature enough to really appreciate it like it
Hmm.
deserved. And so I was
Hmm.
like, I came out of it thinking, oh, that was pretty good. Not my favorite thing. But over the years, it's kind of just grown in my mind.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Eric? What is your overall thoughts about Big Fish?
I remember when it came out too. I think I was a senior in high school when it came out, and I saw it in theaters that year.
Mm,
And like Jackson, I'd followed sort of Tim Burton's career for a long while. But then also like John August, the writer who adapted the book, wrote like Go before this and a couple other things.
mm,
So I'd known like some of the creative teams behind it. So I was kind of looking forward to it. I kind of came out in the same boat that Jackson did. In this movie, it grew for a while for me, and then for a long while, I probably haven't watched this movie in 10 years before we decided to review it. So it's been a while.
mm.
And parts of it still are I really love the first hour of this movie and the last 30 minutes of this movie. But we'll get into some of this other stuff later. But
All right, cool, man. As far as my overall thoughts, and honestly how I discovered this movie it was when I was first starting to really get more into like more movies, and I had
mhm.
access to the internet and IMDb, and I was looking at his filmography, to see a lot of stuff he did, and this was like one movies that I never heard of from him.
Mm.
And I'm like, I took out the trailer and it seemed pretty good, and this was like over 10 years ago, and then I'm finally watching it now.
Yeah.
As far as my
It
overall
kind of came and went.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of a flop, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
At least domestically. I don't know how it did overseas, but yeah.
It barely made back its money. I think it made
Mm.
like 120 million off of like a $70 million budget, but that's
Yeah.
before like advertising and all that sort of stuff. So it was
Right.
like a break even at best sort of thing.
Yeah. But my overall thoughts is I don't think I love it as much as Jackson does, at least right now, because this is the first time watch. But I really thought it was kind of an interesting premise. To me, this movie, and I'm assuming the book is like this too, is sort of if Roald Dahl wrote Forrest Gump. Because it's very Forrest Gump meets like Roald Dahl.
About right.
It's very it's very Forrest Gumpy. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I like this movie. I think it's a really cool premise. I mean, how can you not like Ian McGregor? I think he's just one of the most likable actors of all time. Up there with like Keanu Reeves and Hugh Jackman. Danny DeVito with a southern accent was something I was not expecting.
Oh, all the southern accents in this movie are
Yeah.
very special.
Yeah. It helps that it is supposed to be a tall tale and it's
Right.
a little larger in life. You can go like, okay, I can get over some of these.
Right.
But
they're,
everybody,
like, a lot.
everybody in this movie is from Alabama, but
Yeah.
nobody.
Oh,
one
now I
sounds
know
like
why you
this
wanted
is
to review
from
it,
Alabama.
Jackson. Because
What?
you're from Alabama. I know
This
why
is
you want
true.
to. Yeah.
But none of the actors are southern.
Right.
Most of them aren't even American.
A lot of them, yeah.
Um. So yeah, that was real fun. I just like all the little moments. I like how he goes to the town inspector. That's a lot of fun. I love the whole thing where he's trying to talk to the girl from the circus, and the whole like her fiance like gets in a fight with them. Like that's real fun. And then, like McGregor just so infectious. Like his energy is so infectious. Like that, even though he's getting the crappy out of it, like he still smiles, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I almost feel bad for that bully though, in some ways, because we don't ever really see why he's why they say he's like a mean son of a bitch, basically.
Well, it's funny because he's played by David Denman, who played basically the same type of character on The Office.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Always getting cucked and stuff around this time period.
Yeah, for sure.
He got typecast. He got typecast as a cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of liked how this movie felt very different in some. I mean, there's obviously like when the vast majority of the movie when the stories are being told, in this fantasy kind of way, like because very much this. Well, I guess we'll get to it, but some of these stories are like a stretch. Like didn't quite happen the way the dad is telling it.
Yeah, that's the point.
Of course.
Yeah.
Is that he has all these really interesting stories from his life, but he has to sort of embellish them and heighten them
to
make
I
them
thought that was
sort
real
of
neat.
even more fantastical. Even though he's led a really interesting life when you piece it together.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't even like notice that watching the movie until I listened to the blank check episode. I'm like, oh wait, that was a home Bellas?
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I liked how like there's like the real world with Brendan Crudup and Marion Cotillard. That felt very different from anything Tim Burton had never done. Versus like
never made like a real world just drama like this.
Yeah.
I mean, and even though only about, a third to a half of the movie is set in the real world.
Sure.
He's still got all these fantastical sequences, but you've never seen him just make a movie about regular people before.
Just
even
talking
Ed Wood,
for the most part, yeah.
which is, based on a true story, but it's still done in a very 1950s black and white heightened style.
Yeah, it's very much like the stories that this dad tells in this movie. It's true, but it's a very heightened version of it. Because apparently, like Bela Lugosi didn't, according to his son, didn't with an ass foul mouth. That the movie portrayed it.
Sure, but that's more fun to have a
Right,
foul mouth old
right.
man.
That slimy cocksucker didn't deserve this for my own shit. So I love that scene so much. It's so fun to hear like Modern Landau at Bela Lugosi just swear.
hmm
But
That's why they kept it in there. That's why they had him
but
curse.
yeah, and like I was saying before we came on here, this is you had a director very much like Spielberg. We have a director that did a lot of like kind of crowd pleasing kind of blockbuster movies, doing more of a serious type movie, like what Spielberg
Mhm.
did with like Color Purple and Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, going
Right.
from the Oscar Gold. And this movie only is the same kind of same thing, and
Sure.
sort of. And
Which
it's
is
like,
strange.
Trying to make an Oscar kind of movie,
Yeah.
but it did not succeed in that regard. I
Yeah.
think it
Yeah.
only got nominated for score,
yeah.
and it
Yeah.
didn't do that. So
Apparently, that Danny Elfman's only score nominate or only Oscar nominates, and I'm like, that's just crazy.
is it really?
I think so.
Oh my goodness! If that's true, that's shameful.
Yeah,
Surely
yeah.
there's
He didn't
another
get,
one
yeah,
out
yeah, he
there.
didn't get nominated for Batman, Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands. Yeah, that's
None of the
ridiculous.
songs from Nightmare Before Christmas got nominated.
I don't think so.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
Also crazy thing is Spielberg was attached to do this movie before Burton came on, even.
Yeah,
And then he backed out, and then
yeah.
Spielberg's attached to everything at some point.
that's true.
He's always got 5 projects he's looking at, and
That
whatever
boy's got the
comes
money.
together easiest is the one he does.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, that's what I like about him. Like he constantly is staying busy. Like Kim and
Oh,
Del
Danny,
Toro are a lot like that.
Danny Elfman has been nominated for 4 Oscars.
Okay.
For what?
Yeah.
What else did you get nominated?
Goodwill Hunting, Men in Black, Big Fish, and Milk. All
Oh, I
scored.
forgot
Yeah.
you produced some of those.
Huh.
And they also, and the 90s is when he got nominated for twice in the 90s for Men in Black and Goodwill Hunting, like same year. And that's when they did like the split where they did dramatic and comedy scores.
Oh,
So
they were
he's twice
Oscars?
nominated one year.
90s?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
apparently. I guess until the late 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like when they were trying to do a popular movie category, which was ridiculous. And I was serious about the boycott the Oscars that year if that was going to go through. 'Cause I think that's like, I just think it's disrespectful for like a filmmaker like Ryan Coogler who put his heart and soul into Black Panther and he gets nominated with all the other Best Picture winners. I just think it's just disrespectful to say, "Oh, you're a lesser movie than these other."
The Oscars are kind of a joke anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or
Yeah.
less. I think they're getting a little bit better, but it's still there's still something
I don't know.
that I'm at. But that's a whole different topic for a different day.
Right.
Let's get into Big Fish.
Yeah.
This movie opened with a man named Edward Bloom telling the story of how he met his wife on his son engagement dinner or his wedding.
It's his wedding
Birth of his-
reception or yeah.
Okay. And he compares finding your special someone to casting a fish. And there's a line when he says, sometimes to cast an uncastable woman, you have to offer a wedding ring, which I thought was pretty interesting. You get I just thought it was interesting. I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. like the wedding ring is kind of like the bait in the story.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, all these stories are very like allegorical and metaphorical in the sense that
Right.
none of them are really real, but they always kind of apply back to like something about his life.
Yeah, it's a lot like Grimm fairy tales. It's like, these stories, these fanciful stories, but there's a moral lesson in there somewhere. And that's what I don't know, I think that's just part of the charm of this movie too, is like just how just goofy this movie is, like we said. And we can totally get into some of these moments once we get further
Sure.
into it. But
Definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. No, there's just fun moments in this movie.
It's definitely a brighter movie than anything Tim Burton has made before now. As far as like just being sort of like high key for the majority of it. Like there's nighttime scenes, there's some stuff with the witch and everything that's pretty dark and spooky, but like majority of the movie takes place in sunlight, which is not something Tim Burton really does a lot, other than maybe Edward Scissorhands.
Right. Well, and that's the thing about the father and son character is if I remember correctly, Billy Crunup's character, I forgot his name, but his
Is it
character,
William?
yeah, William,
Will,
yeah,
yeah.
Will,
Yeah.
yeah, he basically, had a little bit of a confrontation after the speech.
Which
And
is brutal.
yeah, he's like,
Like,
yeah, I'm fucking tired of your stories, Dad. I'm tired of you telling,
Yeah.
it's almost like Robert Pattinson going off on Willem Dafoe in Lighthouse. I'm like, I'm tired of your stories, and he just leaves, and he didn't see him for another
Yeah.
3 years.
3 years. Yeah, it's
yeah.
crazy.
Well, and
Mm.
apparently, from what I was hearing on the Blank Check episode of this movie, um, Griffin Newman was saying that like William Billy Cornup's character was very much Tim Burton's father, who was like, Tim, you need to stop like drawing these weird skeleton scene Christmas
Yeah.
and Halloween together. Like he just didn't get why his son was in
Mm.
this fantasy world. It's much like Spielberg's dad or any, you see like any of these creative people, throughout
Hmm.
time that are successful, like Spielberg, Tim Burton, Stephen King, like their parental figure is always a lot of them disapprove of them living in this fantasy world. George Lucas is another one. But then
Sure.
them living in that fantasy world is what made them their famous fortune.
Yeah. And it's
Right.
probably certain people of a certain generation too. Like,
Yeah.
baby boomers are just like, you got to go to work. You
Mm.
can't just be whiling away your days dreaming of,
Yeah.
movies and skeletons and,
Yeah. And I
all
can
the
definitely
other silly
relate to that
stuff.
too. I think my dad, and sorry if you're watching this, Dad, I doubt you are, but sorry in advance. But I feel like my dad's a lot like that, where I think he
Mm.
like supports my love of movies
Mhm.
in this podcast, but I don't think he really gets why I'm so obsessed with movies.
Sure.
Where he's more casual with that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
that's
yeah, I
partially
definitely
to
relate to
do with
that
like
too.
adults. Yeah. It's like adult, like parents sort of living vicariously through their kids. And when their wants and desires don't line up
Hmm.
with their parents, it becomes a bit of friction there.
So I like that aspect of the movie. I think a lot of people, with our sort of creative, pop culture accepts mind can relate to a character like Edward Bloom, where you just want to live in this fantasy world and just people around you just don't get it a lot of the time.
Right.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and but I mean eventually, Will gets it. Like he gets why his father does that.
I don't know that
I
he
mean,
actually
not.
gets it.
I don't. Yeah.
Really?
I don't think he actually gets it. I think he just learns to accept it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
But
Well,
I
you
don't think
more
Will
than
is
that.
going to turn around the next day and start telling his kid, wild stories about his life. I don't think he's going
Yeah.
to change.
He's a journalist. He's very matter of fact. That's what he wants is
I
the
think he just
facts.
comes to terms with the way his dad.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Well,
meeting him like that death scene is hard. It's a hard watch. Like him like playing along and like going through all of
Yeah,
it.
we need to
like,
wait and talk about that.
We'll
towards
get to
the end
that,
of the
but yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Oh,
right. Well, that's the thing about it is like, the father, within those 3 years, he gets cancer and then he's slowly dying,
Mhm.
hmm
and that's where like the main crux of the story kind of picks up, where he tells the wife, Billy Crunup's wife, the same stories again
Yeah.
that he's
The
heard all
difference
his
is that
life.
she loves the stories.
Yes,
yeah.
I love that.
Everyone,
Hasn't grown up
everyone loves
around
the
it.
stories. It seems like,
Right.
yeah,
And I like
Uh,
how he says, we're storytellers, you and I. I speak mind out, you write yours down. He says that in
yeah,
well,
mhm.
and I think maybe that's why Will join journalism, because there's realism. That's real stuff.
Sure.
Like he
maybe.
didn't want to do like in the fiction writing. He wanted to stick with something that's tangible, that's in the real world. Like he wanted to distance
I
himself from that kind of
sure.
thing.
I mean, I think too. It also deals with a little bit of like the orator and being like a verbal storyteller versus
Mm.
like a written like a wrote down storyteller. Which is very much what like Albert Finney's character is in this movie, is that he didn't write any books. He doesn't really like this isn't like his job. He just likes to tell these
Well,
stories.
he's getting
Like
into
it's the
like that.
only enjoyment in life.
Yeah.
Because he was
Well,
a door-to-door salesman.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think Edward Bloom kind of carries on that old tradition of like tribes telling stories about
Right.
like
Sure.
fighting a bear or a wolf or whatever,
Right.
and absorbing his powers or whatever, like the
Mhm.
indigenous stories or whatever, and that's like classic, like that's been
Yeah.
going on since the dawn of
Yeah.
humans. So like I think he's
I mean,
continuing that kind of thing.
of course. I mean, the book he's reading in bed, I think when Marion Cotillard comes in, is like Joseph Campbell is a hero with 1,000 faces, which
Oh, that's
is
cool.
which is just like all of this.
Oh, I don't even think I noticed that.
Yeah. I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it until
Hmm.
this time. I was like
Hmm.
looking for that sort of stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, that's really interesting. Because I mean, like the same stories are going to be told a million times. You take
Yeah.
the
Mm.
Oscar-winning movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right.
How many stories and movies have we seen where like the kid wants to forge their own path away from their parents? You know what? Like we're talking about, funny enough, and
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
parents have to prove, and then throughout the story, they learn to accept their child for what they want to
Yeah.
do. We've seen that so many times, but we never seen it in that way before. It was like
Sure.
hot dog
Just
hands
come.
and parodies of Ratatouille and um
Rakakuni.
yeah, dildos, shaped, nunchuck.
Rakukuni. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just coming at it from a different angle. Yeah. It's
Right.
like a lot of stories. I'm not gonna say that there aren't stories out there that haven't been told yet, because
Mm,
I want to believe that there is. I want to believe that there's something out there. But it's just coming at these tried and true
mm,
hero myths from like a different angle than it would be before.
right. But I
Um,
think I disagree, Eric. I think the foundation of all stories are pretty much set. It's just a different way of telling it. And if you can do that uniquely, you can disguise the foundation. I bet.
that's fair. I want to believe that there's a story out there that I've never heard before and will never hear again. But that's
Yeah.
just the hope I have.
One of the first big stories that Edward retells his son and tells his wife for the first time is the story of the old witch played by Helena Bonham Carter, who lives in the woods of Aston, Alabama.
Hmm.
And basically, the thing about this witch is, she has like a prosthetic eye, and if you look,
Hmm.
that's covered up by iPads. And when she pulls that iPad up, you get to see how you're gonna die.
Hmm.
And then the bully kid um sees how he's gonna die, and it's quite funny. He's like reading a Playboy magazine on the toilet, and he falls over. And
All
you
the
see
ways
that
to
later
die.
in the movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
It's a nice play for his brother too there, where he's just like, I died, I was old, and he's like, I died and I
Yeah.
wasn't old.
yeah,
Also,
so
that was Miley Cyrus is in that scene. She's like the
Yeah, I was
other
oh
about to
little
yeah,
say
kid.
that. Yeah,
yeah,
she's the little girl. Is her first screen credit.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's cool. But then so those kids run away, but then Edward stays, and he says to the witch, if dying was all you thought about, could it kind of screw you up? And then he sees how he dies in her eye. He does, but the audience don't.
Right.
Hmm.
Like it's like as he's watching it, it's like a thought of him watching that.
Mm.
And he tells his son, I saw my death in that eye, and this isn't how it happens. Him on the in his bed.
Right.
Hmm.
Um
Right.
and then his son
Well,
asks, so how does it happen? And Edward responds, surprise ending. Wouldn't want to know, wouldn't want to ruin it for you.
yeah.
But I love that because it keeps suspense.
Yeah.
Like you
Sure.
don't
And
know.
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what kind of builds a mystery? Like you keep guessing like what's gonna happen to him.
Right.
Which
And
is
it's a bit of his like superpower for the movie too. It's that he
Yeah,
knows he can
because
conquer anything because he knows this isn't going to kill him. Like he
Right.
can't. He doesn't. He's
Oh
fearless
yeah,
in some
that's an
ways.
aspect of the movie that I
Yeah.
forgot about. But that's
Which leads me to ask, if you could see how you die, would you do it?
do what? The thing that I
Would you like look into the eye and see your own death?
no, absolutely not.
Oh, I totally
Yeah, I
would.
would. I would.
I
I
would.
absolutely would.
I would. I just want to live my
Absolutely
life
would.
and not worry about it.
Yeah, but
But
you
see, I don't
wouldn't.
think I'd worry about it then. Yeah, you would. You'd be like,
That's the
oh,
point, is you wouldn't have to worry about it because
no.
anything you get into until you get to the situation that leads to your death, you're
Yeah,
like,
but what if
okay,
like your death is
I'll be
like so
fine.
fucked up that you're just living your whole life like worrying about like what if like a plane crash or something like that when you're
Well,
I
like
you
mean,
know.
50 and you see
then
this when you're
still,
like 25. So yeah, you're like 25 years.
yeah, you have 25 years. You have exactly 20. We don't know exactly when we're going to go. We could all die
Exactly.
tomorrow, technically, if we want to be morbid about it. But if you've got 25 good years, you know you have those. And you
Right.
know that anything in your path
Okay,
between here
you
and
got
there
me there
won't kill
because you
you.
get to do whatever you want for those 25 years.
You
Right.
don't get to do anything you want, but you know.
Anything, but you get to yeah, you know when you're gonna die. Like you get to do what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless you die young on the toilet reading a Playboy. So I don't know.
Yeah, that would be
That would
embarrassing.
be the only
Yeah,
room.
I
Yeah.
think that guy enjoyed that Playboy magazine a little bit too much, if you know what I mean.
That's what
But
did
it's
him in.
funny that like we keep calling this like a family movie, and it really is in a lot of points in a lot of aspects. But you got a guy winning a Playboy magazine and dies on the toilet while reading.
There's also a lot of
It's a
nudity in
flash,
this
and,
movie.
and then it's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
barely see any of it.
yeah, and you got Albert Finney talking about his mom being in the milkman.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
That's a good joke though. Milkman dropped dead on the porch.
but then and like I said, this movie is just a series of stories. This is just a bunch
Yeah.
of vignettes, a
It's
lot
very
like
episodic in that way.
So then you find out that Ed's body grows quickly like the common goldfish that's left out in open space. And he figures that the reason that that this is happening because he was attended for large things like being good at sports, winning science fairs, and saving dogs from burning buildings. And then he became not like physically, but like as like a celebrity, the biggest thing in Aston, Alabama, until a giant named Carl shows up and starts terrorizing the townsfolk and eating the livestock and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So then Eddie
Poor
goes
misunderstood
to the
giant.
giant and convinces him that you should leave for the city. Um, because it's bigger for you. And like the whole time that the giant is like very apprehensive and very skeptical about
Yeah.
what Edward's doing. He's like, you're just saying this because you want me to leave. And he's like, no, I want to go with you. We can go together. Like, we both have ambitions. We're both larger than life. And
Yeah.
this sounds like too small for us. Like me for my ambitions and then you for your ties.
Yeah.
That's
I
not
love
what
the giant sequence. I just
The
love
giant
that
sequence is great.
they build him up to be this big scary giant, and you get to him and he is big and he does look kind of scary, but he's just like this insecure guy. He's like, I'm just so
Just very
hungry.
hungry. Yeah.
Yeah.
My arms are a little stringy, but there's some good meat in my legs.
Yeah, and that just goes after that just goes back to like McGregor's charm that he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I just love. It's just so infectious.
This movie is very charming when it works. When it works, it's really charming.
And then eventually, they leave the town and oh no, so after leaving the town, Ed ends up passing the wits on his way out, and then he tells her the biggest fish in the river gets that way by never being caught,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was a pretty interesting kind of thing. Because it kind of goes back to that whole goldfish thing. Like the common goldfish grows abnormally large in open spaces, versus them being enclosed. So I think
Yeah.
that was kind of a cool like callback to that thing. It's like never
Yeah,
being
and
confined to the one thing. Like if you keep being complacent with yourself and being combined in your own comfort zone, like you're never gonna like amount to a whole lot.
Mm.
Right. It also goes back to just like the idea of like fish stories and telling the idea of like the bigger fish is like if you never catch that fish, then that fish keeps getting bigger and bigger. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
the idea
another
of myths and legends.
that's
Yeah.
another Ian McGregor movie. I've quoted another movie with Ian McGregor, The Phantom Menace, a cinematic classic.
Big fish. Yeah.
Did Attack the Clones come out the same year as this? I can't remember.
It might have.
Or was this in between? Or maybe it was in between. I think because
No, this is in between. Attack of the
Revenge.
Clones is 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith.
Ewan
Yeah,
McGregor
but-
was real busy in the
He's
2000s.
doing a lot. He was, yeah.
So then Ed splits from Carl and comes across a strange town named Spectre, where he befriends a poet from Aston, Alabama, named Northern Winslow, played by Steve Buscemi.
Another non-Southerner doing a
Yes.
ridiculous Southern
Southern.
character accent.
Yeah. And he also sees a naked woman in the lake use a fist, which is kind of weird and interesting. And then so he leaves this town because he's not ready to settle down.
Well, they tell him that like you're supposed to be here, but you're early.
Right.
And
And
it's
like, but they welcome him in anyway.
it's like, are all these people dead? What is
Right.
happening?
Yeah, like what is this place? It's called Spectre. Everyone seems a little too happy.
Yeah, and nobody wears
They're-
shoes.
No one wears shoes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Steve Buscemi dancing in that one shot where they're like spinning around. He's like popping up over that guy's shoulder.
Mm.
Like makes me laugh every time I see
Yeah,
it.
we
I
can't
forgot all
gloss
about
over Northern Winslow too much. Of course, he shows back up later, but
that. Yeah.
just his poem that he's been working on for
Mm.
12 years.
12 years. Yeah.
He's like,
It's like roses are red, violets are blue. I love Spectre.
I love Spectre. That's why you don't show works in progress.
yep. Unless you're showing it to somebody who's also working on it, like you are with with our Screen Fan film.
Mm.
But anyways, yeah, so that's a little fun, and I think it kind of goes back to the whole, the thing that the witch told where the biggest fish in the river didn't get that way by being caught. Going back to the thing about not being confined,
Right.
breaking out into the world, and
Yeah.
and this, well, I think this thing clearly states that Everett Bloom eventually wants to live in a town like Spectre and settle down, but just not yet. He wants to go off on adventures. He get bigger fish to fry. Pun intended.
Yeah.
A
A lot of fish metaphors.
Yeah. A lot of fish metaphors. And then him and Carl end up at the circus where he meets the love of his life, Sandra, played, I believe, from the actress from Dragon to Hell.
Yeah,
Right.
it's Alison Lohman,
Alison Lohman.
who is a great choice to play young Jessica Lange. Like,
Yeah.
I like her in this
Spot
movie.
on.
Yeah, I did not like her in Dragon to Hell. I thought, I don't know, something about her performance didn't really do it for me, but I think she's really good here.
she's kind of an odd actor. Yeah,
Yeah. Did you ever see Matchstick Men with
No, I've heard about
Nicolas
it.
Cage?
really good in that.
Amazing.
Okay, I think
Like
I've
great.
seen
Matchstick Men is like an unsung movie,
Mhm.
in my opinion. People don't talk about it enough. Sam Rockwell's great. Nicolas Cage is great.
I think it came out the same year as this movie. I
It
think
was around the same
2003.
time. Yeah, it was either 2002, 2003. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott. Yeah, it was
I don't
good.
think I've seen
Matchstick
it
Men's great.
since. Actually, I saw it in the theater and I was like, "That was cool," and I've never watched it again.
Right. Well,
It's
and
worth
then-
revisiting.
Yeah. But then the movie does this thing where, when you meet the love of your life, the person you're supposed to be with, like time, like metaphorically stands still. And they do that kind of effect here where like popcorn is flying everywhere and
Yeah.
like crappy artists are in the middle of their tricks and this time literally stands still. As he walks over to Sandra. And then he makes a deal with the ringleader played by Danny DeVito. If every month that he works at the circus, Danny DeVito tells her tells him a fact about Sandra
And it's the worst facts ever.
Right.
Loves daffodils.
College.
Yeah.
Going to college.
College.
On the college.
There's like vapid things to say about
Yeah.
someone.
But I mean, to be
He-
honest,
he
that's the thing about it is,
But he just eats it up like it's like
yeah.
this
College.
deep truths about her. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing about it is like Danny DeVito to me is one of those actors like a Julie Andrews or a Willem Dafoe, where he's literally the highlight, like of
Oh yeah.
the highlights of any movie that they're in.
Mm.
Like he and it's so over the top with like the accent and him just how animated his character is in this movie. But like it's just so infectious. Like he steals the scene in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I honestly think he's my favorite character in the movie just because of how fun he is to watch.
We should
honestly.
also not
Interesting.
skip over the appearance of Deep Roy in this segment.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
The legendary
God.
character actor who's been in like everything.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. He was in Star
He-
Trek, the 091 one.
Star Trek, I think he was an Ewok at some point in Star
Yeah.
Wars. He's all the Oompa Loompas in
Yeah.
Oh god, I
Chocolate
fucking hate
Factory.
that movie. Fuck that movie. Fuck
Yeah, but he's really good in
Oh,
that movie.
He's great in it.
Because he
Yeah.
has to
He's the
play
best
like-
part of that movie.
He has
songs
to
are
play like
good.
200 Oompa Loompas, and they're all different. They're all doing different things.
Yeah, I like the Oompa Loompa song, but the rest of the movie can go fucking sell.
I don't know. I feel like I need to rewatch it.
It
I haven't
sucks.
seen it in a
I think
while.
Garbage.
I like it a little bit.
Garbage.
Anyway,
I don't like,
this
I don't
movie,
like the Gene
whenever,
Wilder one though. So
yeah, when Deep Roy opens up his like chest, he has that like concealed gun, and like is about to like cry when he's gonna
Right.
shoot the werewolf.
He's
Danny
great.
DeVito.
Oh
That's
yeah,
just
yeah. Apparently,
so good.
according to
so
these
good.
stories that I didn't catch this either until I listened to the Blank Check episode. Yeah, apparently, Edward Bloom tells his son that the Vito character is a werewolf,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of
Yeah.
funny. I did not catch that at all.
The scratch on his face keeps changing, like between like the night and then the day, the next day. This it gets like
Mm.
bigger and it's just like
On the
there's a
Vito's
lot of silly
face?
stuff. No, on Ewan McGregor's face.
Oh, okay.
And then you get some classic afterwards. You get some classic Danny DeVito butt, which is always good in a movie like this.
Oh, I didn't know
Danny
that either.
DeVito loves to show his butt.
Yeah.
Loves it.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch? I mean, I guess you've all seen probably Always Sunny.
Oh,
When he
yeah.
comes out of the couch.
Clips of it on YouTube. But yeah, I love Danny DeVito. I think he's just such a he's
such a
literally
wonderful Eggman.
yeah, he's one of the best character actors like ever. If you find out that Sandra is engaged to somebody that Ed knew in Aston named Dan Price or Don Price,
Mhm.
and he
Mhm.
Ed keeps proposing to Sandra, and then Don finds out about this and beats the shit out of him. And then Sandra breaks off the engagement to Don, and he says, "I barely know him, but I refer him to you."
Yeah.
And then
And then
yeah, he turns around and he's all bloody, like his teeth are bloody, and he just smiles.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
Don dies on the toilet later
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah, while jerking off to Playboy.
Shouldn't have beat up Ewan McGregor. He should have known.
Yep.
Or Ewan McGregor drove him to this. Ewan McGregor's the one who killed him, as you want to think about it, because that guy didn't do anything wrong. Ewan McGregor showed up and tried to steal his woman,
Oh
who
yeah.
he had been dating and engaged to, and was probably
Wait,
very sweet to her.
You're saying
Who knows?
that this is Tim Burton's Karate Kid? Where
Maybe.
a character barges in on another character's woman who did nothing wrong?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mhm.
Well, just-
They should make. They're gonna make a Cobra Kai of this in like
I mean,
10 years. and
Beating
people are
somebody
gonna-
up is wrong.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in the wrong.
If
He
they
shouldn't
did,
have done that.
they didn't violently attack you and
Hmm.
you're not defending yourself.
Well, to be
Yeah.
fair, Johnny Lawrence was brainwashed by Cobra Kai and John Cleese. Or
Sure.
Cleese. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't give him a lot to do in this movie, but clearly he's a sullen jerk
Yeah.
who's just been holding a grudge against Ewan McGregor. I was just playing devil's advocate, but
So they get married. Ed gets drafted into the army. Where he meets Siamese twins, which come to find out we're just regular twins.
Yeah, just twins.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're just regular. Yeah,
Yep. Played by
this is
Arnold
the section of
Schwarzenegger
the
and Danny
movie.
DeVito.
Yeah. Da-dum.
Sorry, I love
This is the part of the movie that kind of goes on too long for me, or you know what I mean? Like I feel like we were building towards something, and then this whole sequence feels very Forrest Gump in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And I don't know what we gain out of it other than just realizing that their twins are not Siamese. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it was
This and the
fun.
robberies. No, it's fun. I'm not even arguing that it's not fun. All of it's fun, but it's just like this is the section of the movie that I'm just kind of like, where is this going? Like it just kind of like goes
Doesn't
on.
it doesn't have any thematic bearing on the
Yeah,
story. It just is kind of there to be there.
yeah,
Yeah, I think he needed to be a salesman, like a traveling salesman. So he gets back to Spectre and realizes it's shutting down, or like it's not thriving as much. So then he buys
sure.
it, and then
Yeah, but
it's
I'm talking about specifically the army sequence.
yeah,
The
no, I'm
army
saying
sequence.
no,
Yeah.
I'm saying I agree with you with that, but I'm saying I know
Oh,
why they did the salesman thing because that whole thing with Spectre and Helen Bonham Carter, where his son thought he was having an affair with that
sure.
character, but they're really being business partners or something like
Of
that.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets a little muddy in there too, where it's just like, why is he buying this town? But it doesn't
Yeah,
really. I don't know.
but
I
the
got I
army
got little
scene,
nitpicks with these
yeah,
sections. This little middle section, like
mm,
after Allison Lohman accepts his proposal and everything. Um, yeah, I feel like just some of the female characters in the movie don't get a strong shake sometimes, and we
Right.
spend a lot of time on stuff that's like the army sequence is fun, but also at the end of the day, it doesn't really do
yeah.
anything for like the movie
I will
thematically.
say I did like the part where he's during like this concert that the Siamese twins are doing, that
Hmm.
he's like breaking into like this facility or whatever, and he gets
Hmm.
into like an office and like these two guys, these Korean soldiers are like doing like karate moves or whatever, and then he smiles, turns off the lights, and just beat the crap out of them.
Hmm.
That was pretty funny.
Oh, and the ventriloquist makes
The
me laugh. That
ventriloquist
it's
is the
just this
funniest
this
part.
the driest, no laughs everyone.
I don't remember
It's
that.
very funny. Oh, it's
It's
right
when he's
before he
first
drops in.
parachuting in.
Uh,
There's a ventriloquist on stage with a little dummy, and he's just you don't ever know what the guy is saying because it's not
Okay.
subtitled or anything, but it's just so dry and boring.
Okay.
Nobody's
they
entertained.
have, yeah, they have to come and force him off the stage.
Mhm.
It's so funny.
Yeah. And like I was trying to say before, I think this scene and then the bank robbery scene, they're fun the scenes, they're fun.
Mm,
Yeah, it's another fun story. I think they would
sure.
have worked better as like a deleted scene, honestly. I think they
Mm.
should have like cut off the army scene and then have the whole salesman scene, cut the bank robbery
No,
scene.
the bank robbery is really important.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because think about it. That's where he ends up getting the money to buy up the whole town
Oh, okay, then never mind. Just get rid of the army scene.
because he convinces Steve Buscemi to give up his life of
Hmm.
crime and go make money
Hmm.
on Wall
Steve
Street.
Buscemi? You mean Steve Buscemi?
That's what I said.
You said Steve. I thought I heard Steve.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Steve
I
Buscemi.
would watch. I'd watch a movie with Steve Buscemi.
But yeah, he convinces him to go make his money like in business and
Mm.
he gets really rich and that's where he starts to get money.
And it's how he buys the house too,
That's how he
because he
buys
gives
his
him that ten
house.
percent
Yeah.
prod. Yeah,
For ten
but yeah,
thousand dollars, if only.
so cheap. If only in the 70s. No, I just in watching
Yeah,
that scene, I just
only in the
really
70s.
wanted to see more with like him and Allison Lohman. You know what I mean? Like they set up this whole
Right.
promise of them being like a couple, and we never really get the closest thing we get to them like being really tender to each other is that like bathtub scene, which I
Yeah,
really
which is really
like.
good. Yeah.
It's a really good scene. I wanted more of that, especially on
Mhm.
this like this last watch through. I
Mhm.
wanted like a couple more scenes of that, and I would have done less with like the war scene, which feels very Forrest Gump because Forrest Gump goes to war, and so like
Right.
this is sort of like that hero's journey. They have to go into somewhere super
But at least in
dangerous.
Forrest Gump, that made sense because the whole thing with Forrest Gump is this guy in different parts of history when he's meeting all these presidents, and then
Mhm.
he's
Sure.
there during like different these different historical events like that. At least that made sense there.
Sure.
Um, yeah, and he witnesses Watergate, which I think is hilarious.
So guys in the flashlights again. Yeah,
Yep,
that's
that's how
good.
they got caught. With Forrest Gump
Yeah.
caught him red-handed.
Well, unless you've seen the movie Dick, then
Oh.
it turns out it was two like loopy teenage girls.
Hmm.
So
So what you're saying is that they need to make a Rushmont version of Watergate and just put those two teenage girls from Dick and then Forrest Gump. You just get different
Hmm.
perspectives on Watergate.
Hmm. Oh, I'm sure there's another one out there we're not even thinking of that we
Yeah,
could put in the
that'd
mix.
be interesting. That would actually be really interesting. Do like a historical event, like a real life historical event, but do like the Rushmont version of it.
Hmm.
put in some from Oliver Stone's Nixon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That would be interesting. I mean, obviously, I know we're joking about it, but take it like seriously. Like, do a serious version of that. That'd be interesting.
Mm.
But anyways, so then, blah blah blah, army, blah blah blah, salesman, blah blah blah, bank robbery, blah blah blah, goes back to Spectre, blah blah blah. Son thinks he slept with Helena Bonham Carter. With if
Mm.
that's the truth, then way to go, Edward Bloom. Because Helena Bonham Carter is one of the hottest pale chicks ever. But now, well, the thing, cause that was Tim Burton's girl, or main actress for a while was Helena Bonham.
Yeah, I
And
think this is the movie where that started.
oh,
Yeah,
okay, I thought they did another one before that.
No, I think this is the first time
I think so.
because he was with Lisa Marie
Lisa Marie. Mhm.
from
Presley?
no,
Oh,
just
okay.
Lisa Marie, the one from she plays Vampira in
Vampira.
Deadwood,
Mhm.
and
Oh, okay.
yeah,
She's the Martian. She's the Martian lady in
right.
Mars Attacks, like
And
Yeah,
the
so
super
that was
busty
his
one.
that was his girl, and yeah, they
yeah,
broke
so
up, and he got together with Helena Bonham Carter.
yeah, so yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So no chick in high school would ever date him. So he just made weird movies and put in actresses that had the same mindset that he had, and then dated them, and then sometimes married them. That was his strategy. Good to go, Tim Burton.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think he probably just cast people that were talented. Well, at least in Helen Bonham Carter's case,
Hmm,
super talented. You know, in the process of making art
hmm.
together, they fell in love. It's a sweet
Right.
story.
Like the whole him Will reading that name on that that document like
Mm.
kind of makes didn't that make him realize that that his father's stories are not quite what they are, or it was something like he had like a realization or something like that.
Well, I mean,
Well,
he
it's
spent
that.
the
So,
whole movie trying to get to the bottom of everything, and he's
Yes.
going
mhm.
in and asking his dad, "Can you tell me the real version of your life?"
Mhm.
And of course, his dad bows up at him and everything, and he's like, "Well, I've only ever told you facts, you know." And
How is it good Aberfinny?
you know, we haven't even talked about Albert Finney at all.
Yeah, if
His name
anybody
has
was
even
gonna get
come up.
nominated for this movie, it was gonna be him.
Yes,
He's
uh,
really good.
legendary British actor, like
Yes.
so many great parts, never bad in
Mhm.
anything.
Mhm.
So, he gets to the bottom of this whole thing that
Mm.
he where he thinks he had an affair with this woman played by Helen Bonham Carter, but no, it really
Mhm.
was they had a partnership, like a business partnership
Hmm.
on some properties in Spectre or something like that. And then I
Mhm.
can't remember what happens after that, but one another really important part was I think, like you said, Jackson, William is starting to understand why his father is hiding these stories. Um, and there's a part where, because he ends up going to the hospital, right?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
comes back. Will comes back from Spectre after talking to
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He
Helen
goes
Bonham
to
Carter.
Spectre. I
Yeah,
forgot about that. Okay,
Yeah, and his dad's in the
yeah.
hospital and not doing
Hmm.
well.
yeah. And so
Which
they,
she becomes the narrator for a while, which is
Yeah.
interesting
oh,
turn there for
okay,
that.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because most of it had been Albert Finney at this point,
mm,
mostly. Some of it's Will.
yeah,
Like
yeah, I
there's
remember
three
that.
narrators in this movie, which is kind of
Right.
strange.
Mm. But Yeah, but then like they come up with like this scenario of how like they're gonna escape the hospital, which I thought is a lot of fun.
Well, before that, you get one of the best scenes in the movie where
Mm.
what's the actor's name? I can never remember his name that plays the doctor.
I can't remember his name
Robert
either.
Guillaume.
Mm,
Yep.
Yeah, one of those great character actors that dips in for like a scene or two and then like
Hmm.
owns the screen and then leaves the movie.
right.
But he tells that story. He's like, "Have I ever told you about what really happened the night you were born?" And it turns
Hmm.
out that he was born a week premature and his
Mm,
dad was out on a sales trip and he really, really wanted to be there. And it's the most
Hmm.
mundane thing ever. He just
right.
missed the trip because
Yeah.
the kid came early.
Mm,
Right.
And
There's no complications, and he also says during the time like men weren't really known to be
they
in
didn't
these,
really show up
so
at the hospital
it
anyway.
would
mm,
it's just like it wouldn't matter if he was there or not. Like you wouldn't
Yeah.
have been there for the birth anyway.
But, and then he says, I feel like if I was given the choice between the real story and the fantasy version, I'd go with the fantasy one. And it's
Hmm.
a really beautiful moment
mm,
where also William says, I think I like the real version.
Hmm.
mm,
And the thing is, so throughout this movie, you've seen like Ewan McGregor telling these stories to the kid while he's like sick in bed or whatever, or on a Boy Scout trip. But the whole story that Will tells is that he wasn't really around that much. He was always off on business.
Hmm.
But when you do see them together in the little flashbacks, it seems like he was a pretty,
Yeah.
loving, attentive parent, who'd take the scout troop on camping
mm.
trips and tell them stories. And somehow Will came to sort of resent him anyway.
Oh
Um,
yeah, because there's a whole montage of his
at the beginning, yeah.
yeah of all the times his father would tell these stories.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow,
Well, it's
like
the same story. He
yeah,
shows him telling the same story over a period of years because he's telling it to like, Will's prom
yeah,
date and everything.
Hmm.
mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it just echoes that sort of being embarrassed by your parents at a certain age. Like
Right.
everyone, I think, is embarrassed to have like parents that love them and care for them. Like I'm an adult. I'm 13 now. I can do my
Yeah.
own things. You know what I mean?
right.
So I think that's where a lot of that stems from, and he just never got over that.
Mm.
Um,
Well, I think
but
one
sorry, go ahead.
indication. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, but I think another indication, um, another kind of brilliant thing, and I don't know if this was intentional or not. That Will is kind of like he didn't not that he didn't like his dad, but he just kind of wanted to distance himself to his dad was in his adult age, in his adult life, he didn't have a southern accent, and I think maybe that's part of it. Like he just
Hmm.
wants to do his own thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, but I love that whole. But no, I didn't connect that dots of like, yeah, like he is telling these stories over and over, again, and it's just I don't know. I think Will just gets tired of it, and he just
Yeah.
wants to get to the truth, of what
Yeah.
happened.
Well,
Yeah.
that's Edward's way of connecting with people,
Yes,
is
Hmm.
telling them these fun stories that will entertain them.
Hmm.
I think
And
that's what it
yeah,
is.
there's a lot of self-aggrandizing to it, but I think
Sure.
he just really wants people to enjoy a good story.
Mm,
Yeah. It's the reaction more than anything else that he gets out of it. So he
right.
is it's that orator sort of thing that it goes back to. It's the call and response, is that audience. If a person is enjoying it and smiling, because a lot of times they'll ask questions, they'll say stuff while they're doing it. It's that connection that he enjoys, I think,
Mhm.
most about it. When
Right.
Will's is not so much the human connection, but it's the exchange of
Mm,
ideas. It's just the facts. It's just
right.
the forward facing things.
Yeah.
Well, but don't we all embellish stories a little bit? Like
Well,
we,
you can't help but embellish stories because
yeah.
the more time you're removed from something that happened in your
Mm,
life, you're going to
Hmm.
remember it differently.
right.
You
Well, not
know,
just that, but
you're going
like,
to zero in on little details and maybe forget other details.
yeah.
Sure.
and you're gonna heighten the things that really make the story funny. I've got lots of stories that I've told to many people over the years, and I've sort of
They're not exactly
those
true,
stories
probably.
Right.
where they're the best versions of themselves. And maybe I don't tell like I don't like put fantasy elements into it
Right.
or anything, but I find the things in the story that really make the story pop.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's like, well, I mean, I think everybody does this particular thing where you say you have to wait for a long time for something. You always say, I have to wait forever, or I wait it for an
Right.
eternity and a half. Yeah, just one of those little things to really build the story.
Sure.
Or, like, I remember one time, and this was an actual story that happened to me. It was at Thanksgiving dinner with some of my family in Florida. And one of my family members had a four-wheeler, and the almost the half of the day I would ride on the back of the four-wheeler or in front of it with one of my family members, and while they were doing the gas and everything, and then one of my family members got me to do it, did the gas, and I shotgunned it, and it went flying up on a tree, and we fell on our butts. That's a story you can embellish a little bit.
Of course.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. But yeah, everybody does that, and they add in like little flavors to
Yeah,
make it.
but just most people aren't as good at it as Edward Bloom.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I like how he doesn't really capitalize off of these stories, really.
Oh.
Yeah. He didn't
No,
write them down.
no. It's not his profession.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't keep. Because I think in his mind, maybe, and obviously the movie didn't explore this really at all. But I would imagine in his mind, him doing that would lessen the stories in a way.
But also, you got to imagine this guy's a salesman.
Mm.
You got to imagine he's been telling these stories to like his customers for years, and that makes
Years
him
and
more
years, yes.
endearing, and that
Right.
makes him a better salesman.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like Michael Scott on The Office. You see him as the manager, and he's terrible. But every time he goes out on a sales call, he just knows how to endear himself to people and make the sale. So
Right. Yeah, and then isn't this other fantasy scene part of the hospital escape scene where like he like goes to the funeral and it's all
that's
his
after.
Oh
The funeral is after, but
no,
the-
but not the fantasy funeral when it's like the people that he met.
Oh, it's all the
Mhm.
people gathered by the river.
Yeah, the way
Yeah.
that they were in the story.
What a magical, beautiful, transcendent sequence.
Yeah, like the people that he knew
That
for
whole
a small
that whole
part of
thing.
his life.
love it. That whole thing with Will telling the story and all that is
Yeah.
so good.
Mm.
And it
The reason the movie
Did-
works.
yeah. To
If
me,
it didn't
that's the
have
end
something
of the-
that crescendo at the end,
Yeah.
the movie might fall flat.
Right.
Yeah. And it kind of does after that. And honestly, the movie probably should have ended there. Like I don't
know.
need
I
to see
really
him
like
dead.
I like the denouement where you go and you see the real versions of these people.
I don't know. But to me, I don't need it at that point. You know what I mean? Like, because you see a little bit of the real when he goes to Spectre. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, and so him choosing to tell that story at the end, we don't need to see them as an audience. I think it's fun, and it's
I
fun
guess
to see the
not,
twins
but
and everything.
I find it
But-
very effective.
Well, I think it
Sure.
really it emphasizes harder that he did embellish these stories. He had in them. Like I don't think
Of course.
I think it was easier for our audience to catch on to that.
But
Maybe.
it also shows that in every one of these stories, there was this kernel of truth.
Mm.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
they weren't lies, because that's one of the things that Billy Crudup says during the thing. It's like, you don't tell facts, you tell lies.
Right.
You
That's true.
tell entertaining lies.
Mm.
And it's very cutting the way he says it.
Yeah.
But you learn that they're not lies, they're just a more fun version of the truth.
Yeah.
Right. For sure.
Like
Yeah.
he did go
Billy-
into the military and meet these twins.
That's true.
Help them get out of North Korea or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't happen exactly the way he said it, but he did do it.
They're not
Yeah,
side
well,
Bs.
that's
Yeah,
what
of
makes
course.
this movie.
They thought he was dead.
And that's what makes these stories interesting. Like he keeps saying, if he just told them the way that they actually happened,
Of
it
course.
wouldn't be much of a movie. Like it wouldn't. Like
Of
that's
course.
not
Yeah.
a Tim Burton. That's not. I mean, that's not something that Tim Burton would um be attracted to. But because the whole story is set up like, oh, this father telling these real life stories
Yeah.
to like his kid and everybody that he comes across and does like fantasy heightened versions of them. That's something that's attracting to Tim Burton. I can see Tim Burton doing something like that.
Right.
Sure.
Well, because Tim Burton is very much of a guy is a guy that takes the mundane and makes and heightens it. Perfect example. I think I think Edward Scissorhands is his best movie because of that.
Mm.
I think that's
Mhm.
I think I often notice that director's best or an artist's best piece of art is something that encompasses everything that they're good at, and that's Edward Scissorhands.
Well, and then Edward Scissorhands is also his most sort of autobiographical movie, I
Yes.
guess,
Yeah.
because it's about this weird kid growing up in the suburbs and nobody understands him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know.
Falling in love with the girl in town.
Yeah. I think you listen to this podcast. I don't know about you, Eric, but the Big Picture podcast brought
Yeah.
that up.
Mhm.
On their Beetlejuice review. They did they
Yeah.
reviewed the movie and then they talked about Tim Burton towards at the second half of the episode, and then they did their top 5 Burton movies. And one of the people on there basically said, like, yeah, it is his autobiographical movie. Because I heard him say in an interview that he grew up in California and he would watch all these Christmas movies or movies set in the winter with snow in them. And I never had that. So then you have this character that's in this environment that grew up in this castle, and then he's thrown into like this suburban environment where it never snows, like a very kind of California kind of. I don't know if the movie takes place in California or not.
It
But
looks like it's Southern
Yeah.
California suburbs.
Yeah, so he makes it snow.
It's the
Next to a
neighborhood
mountain.
where Bela Lugosi lives in Ed Wood.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
nice. That's awesome. But no,
all
he
the
makes
houses are the same, and
yeah, but he
All
makes
those
it
ticky-tacky,
that Edward Scissorhands makes it snow for Winona Ryder's character,
right.
and that was a fantasy that he had, and and then so the guy on the Big Picture podcast was like, when I heard that, like that's when I really appreciated Tim Burton. Like I get where he's coming from, with with his movies.
And yet it seems like he doesn't make personal films anymore.
No.
Yeah, I think that's
really
where,
probably after this one, like they all kind of became more like big studio homogenized sort of.
And maybe it's because this movie didn't do well.
yeah,
maybe so.
Yeah.
and I think it's
I will.
like, nope, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was just going to keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
I was just going.
Well, I think it's a different approach to what Spielberg did with The Fabelmans, where he is basically he's opening up the book to his life and saying, no, what, and even though a lot of this information came out in the documentary that came out before the movie, but like that movie really like opened the book to like, why is his parents divorced? Why is he so obsessed with movies? What movies mean to him? Why did he do so many movies with fathers and divorce as a plot, as a subplot in the movie? Because of this, what happened here. But I think almost later in Spielberg's career, his more personal movies like Schindler's List, like Catch Me If You Can, like Fabelmans were more grounded in reality. Where earlier in his career, he made some personal movies like E.T. and Close Encounters and some other ones, but it was very fanciful. So it's kind of interesting how his career went versus Tim Burton's, where he did personal movies, but did more like his own kind of fantasy version of it. Where Spielberg was, like I said, the first half of it was fantasy versions of him opening up his life or how he feels about things to people. And then the second half is more grounded versions of that. Which is real interesting. And I think that just came from age. I think Spielberg just became, with a lot older, he had more experience in the world, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, he'd been
And
toying with telling that story for a long while anyway.
yeah, well, and I
Yeah.
also think, and then it's funny how this is becoming a Spielberg episode, but I think what's interesting in the documentary where because he was getting bullied, because he was Jewish and he experienced a lot of anti-Semitism, he denounced that part of his life for years until he
Mm.
met Kate Capshaw from Temple of Doom and married her. And
Mhm.
she was asking all these questions about like Jewish tradition and all that stuff, which really sparked back his interest in that. Um, and so that's how he got to do Schindler's List. And I think maybe that had to do with part of it, like that transition to more fantastical, to more realistic kind of projects, maybe.
Sure. Introspection, reflecting
Yeah,
on your life when you reach a certain age, of
yeah,
course.
yeah. Because I think I would imagine, and I don't want to speak for him because I'm not Steven Spielberg, but I would imagine, um, Kate Capshaw asking him all those questions really made him appreciate his culture and what his relatives went through
Yeah.
Of
during that
course,
time period.
it was at least the chip that sort of like cracked it all open, probably for
Yeah,
him.
so yeah, that's an interesting comparison to pretty prolific directors that do personal movies, but they do it so differently and how their career went.
Yeah, but like we said, Tim Burton hasn't made a personal movie in I don't know how long.
20
Yeah, and that's
years.
what's so sad
Yeah.
about it.
20
It's
plus years. Yeah.
yeah, he just
Yeah.
made more like it just seemed like he just lets. I think it. I think either studios maybe interfered too much with them, or studios just let him do just whatever. Like he just got too big for himself, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what his problem is, but
Yeah.
I will say like earlier, like Burton up until this point, all been pretty great, other than maybe Planet of the Apes, which still looks amazing. The
Right.
production design alone and the costumes and makeup look
Right.
amazing, but
Well, and maybe
everything after that is just kind of
yeah.
eh.
Well, maybe it was the
Sweeney
Spielberg.
Todd's pretty good,
Yeah. Well,
Oh, I forget Sweeney Todd's after
but
that. Yeah.
strong
Okay.
source material there.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
thing is, I think it was very much like a Spielberg kind of thing where, yeah, he made all these movies, like, and then that were pop culturally, iconic to the point to where he can kind of do whatever he wanted to do. Like he already made
Mm.
iconic movies. I think that's what Spielberg very much did in the 2010s, was just make whatever thing he wanted, whether or not it popped with an audience or not.
Yeah. A lot of it didn't.
Yeah, so I
But
think that's what I
that's
think.
for a different episode.
Yeah, I think Burton's career went in that a similar direction too. Like he just became so iconic. He's like, yeah, I got Enter Scissorhands, I got Nightmare Before Christmas, I got Beetlejuice, I got two Batman movies. I'll just do what I want now. I don't care. I already
Yeah.
got famous movies.
That's true.
Uh, but anyways, if there's nothing else you want to talk about this movie,
Well, I want to bring up one thing
yeah,
before we completely jump off of it. Is sort of the unsung hero of the movie is Billy Crudup, who really is a very thankless role in here. He's
Yeah.
not doing. He doesn't get to do the showy Albert Finney bits. Um, and really, he's like sort of the emotional core of the movie. Like him,
hmm,
his willingness to play and understand it by the end and tell that story. I don't know. It's very emotional at the end of the
right,
movie for me.
Yeah.
At least that whole fantasy sequence
And
is.
plus, he's the rare person in a Tim Burton movie who's just playing a regular guy.
Just
right.
normal ass person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, it's like the polar opposite. Like he's playing his dad. Like he's playing Tim Burton's dad, basically.
Yeah.
Somebody's just not. He
Yeah.
just wants to live in the regular world. Um.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah. You want to get the favorite part and least favorite part? If you got nothing else to say.
Sure.
Sure.
All right. I'll start with you, Eric. What is your favorite part and your least favorite part of the movie?
Favorite part. I love the giant scene. Like
Yeah.
it's sort of like the best part of them. It really just is that nice dichotomy between like the really heightened reality of the whole thing, but still within like believability. Like nothing in the movie, even in the fantasy sequences, is like too outlandish. Like a fish could get that big, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
could a
I've
car
seen a
could
catfish that big
yeah,
at the Tennessee Aquarium.
right. And
I
so
mean,
like the
the
giant
dude
bit.
does turn into a werewolf.
Well, yeah. Well, supposedly we never really see him transform into a werewolf. It's just implied that that's what's happening in that trailer. But who knows? No, I love the giant bits. All the stuff McGregor has with I forget the actor's name. He passed not too long after this movie came out. But like all the bits there, all those little comedy bits are great. That's my favorite part. And least favorite part's probably the army stuff because it's fun, but it doesn't really add anything, in my opinion. So
All right, Jackson. What is your favorite part and your least favorite part?
I mean, I'm glad Eric didn't pick it because my favorite part is the whole Billy Crudup story at the end of the movie
that's secretly my
where
favorite part. But
they
I
where they
let
escape the hospital and go to the river and Albert Finney turns into a great big fish. It's
Tim pulling the
extraordinary
ring, pulls
filmmaking.
that
Like
ring out of his
it's
mouth.
probably the best individual sequence in any Tim Burton movie, I think.
Hmm. Okay.
Least favorite part, I don't know. I mean, this movie's 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and maybe it doesn't need to be that long. Maybe if you could tighten it up to 2 hours,
Yeah.
that'd be good.
All right, cool. My favorite part would have to be E. McGregor. He's just so infectious. Just like his energy and his vibe. And he's just no matter what life throws at this character, like he's so optimistic. And I just love that. I wish I could be more like
Yeah.
his character in this movie. My least favorite part would have to be the bank robbery scene. I just felt like it felt like a completely different movie. Like at least
I
the
love that
army,
scene though.
it's fun, but at least the army scene still kind of felt a little bit Tim Burton-y, but like that bank robbery scene felt something like completely different. I think.
It does reinforce his humanity
Mm,
in some ways that he gives him the deposit that he was going to put in the bank. He's like he
mm.
still has your and so like he's like I didn't want you to come away empty-handed, you know what I mean? It's that sort of like good guy mentality behind it is what sort of keeps you invested in that character too. So I don't know.
Right, for sure. All right, guys. So that is favorite part and least favorite part. We're on to the score, and how we do our score on the show is we both do our individual filmmaking and thematic score out of 5. And we add those up for a possible overall score out of 10. And then we take a overall score and we average it out for the official horror, sci-fi, and beyond score. And I'll start with you, Jackson. What is your filmmaking score for Big Fish?
I'll give it a 4. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not as aesthetically striking as some Tim Burton movies
Mm,
are, but it's going for a very different thing. It's still really beautiful to look at, and the only thing I'd ding it for is, like I said, it's maybe 15 minutes too long. You could probably tighten it up a little bit. So
all right, cool. What about thematic score?
again, I'll go with a 4. I think this is really strong. This is Tim Burton operating kind of outside his wheelhouse and doing a very tender human story, and it's not just about like weirdness and gothic whatever. It's
Mm,
he's trying something different. He's maybe not as accustomed to it uh as other filmmakers of his generation, so he struggles a little bit, but I think he definitely sticks the landing
mm.
with the
Mm-hmm.
Billy Crudup monologue, and it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really gets to the tender heart at the center of the story.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because all this movies, like you said, all these movies are gothic, and I think he brought kind of like that whole like German expressionistic thing
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in a more mainstream um way. And he's also a big fan of all the Universal monster movies, with his movies definitely play on those kind of themes of being like the outsider and all that stuff. Here it does with the giant Carl.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks he's a monster, but he's just really.
We all love Carl.
Yeah.
I just love that his name is Carl.
Yep.
Carl.
But
He's
no,
got that
Not
little
like
wisp of hair.
Thorgosh or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like Carl.
Carl.
Yeah, but no, Carl is
This kid's so
definitely
hungry.
the Frankenstein monster for sure. Like it's that kind of motif, for sure. When the monster's not really a monster, it's just a misunderstood monster.
Right.
Eric, what is your filmmaking score? Oh no, your overall score, Jackson. Always forget that is
8.
Yes. Okay. Eric, what is your filmmaking score?
My filmic score is probably, I would say it's probably, let's say 4. I'll give it a 4.
Yep.
And it's still a pretty beautiful movie. Everything looks really good. There's a couple CGI bits that don't look quite so great, but it's hard to ding a movie that built like its own animatronic fish and put it in the water for really crude up to like throw away at the end. But yeah,
And
no, like
unlike
I love all the forced
Spielberg's
perspective
animatronic fish, Tim Burton's worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Spielberg
it's great.
animatronic
Visually.
fish didn't work for the best reasons, and not the success of that movie.
But I was just making another parallel because we keep talking about Spielberg.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about Spielberg in this Tim Burton video. We just got
Spielberg almost directed this movie, so it's only stands.
There's a
for
parallel. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, 4, solid 4.
Okay. What about your thematic score?
I don't want to be the same as Jackson, but so I'll say a 3.5 because I I was gonna give it a 4. I'm gonna say a 3.5. And I do think thematically everything works really well with Will and his dad, Albert Finney. But we get just like the stories themselves, we get a little sidetracked off of like that story, like going back and forth between them. And it sticks the landing, but it gets lost somewhere in like the second act for a little bit. So I'm gonna say 3.5.
All right.
But I love the ending. The ending and the first hour are like almost perfect. Yeah.
All right. So that means your overall score is 7.5. Not bad. And I'm gonna be the also contrarian, as I always am on this show, and give the filmmaking score a 4 because I really liked how it's this real. This is a movie that's hard to explain to people, I think. For one, has a lot of vignettes and a lot of set pieces, and there's different, like little stories in the bigger picture of things. And it's a fantasy movie about telling heightening stories that happen in your life and why people do that. So it's a hard movie to pitch, but I think he does it. I think Burton does it as best as he can. So for that, I'm gonna give it a 4. Thematically, I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Cause I think the whole thing with I know it's a very personal movie. I think this and Never Scissorhands are honestly his 2 most personal movies, and I think it of course it didn't strike as hard as like a Fableman, because I think a lot of that stuff in that movie, like so much of that movie, like I relate to. But I can relate to like dealing with somebody that just that's not on my wavelength creatively. It just doesn't get how my brain operates, and all that stuff with my dad. So yeah, for that I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Make him overall.
How are you being contrarian?
Yeah,
What?
you basically gave
You're
it
giving it
almost the
very
exact same score
similar
weight.
ratings to both of us.
Yeah,
And
but
you say you're being
I
contrarian.
thought you were about to go
little
like
bit,
it's
so
a
that's
2.
why it's different.
I thought you were gonna be like it's a 2. looked like trash.
Also,
I
we
hate
should
this
make
movie.
a drinking game of this show where it's like, take a shot every time Drew brings up the Fablemans.
They're like my 2 favorite movies to bring up on this show: is Fablemans and Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah.
We
You
haven't
will
talked
die.
about Top Gun Maverick in a while.
You
though,
will
so
die of alcohol poisoning if you do that.
Yeah,
Please don't do it. Please
Endorse
don't do that.
that
We do
particular
not
game
endorse.
on this show.
But anyways, that brings my overall score to 8.5, making the official horror, sci-fi, and beyond score for Tim Burton's Big Fist an 8.
So I was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a bad move, not a bad score for our first
No, not at
full-on
all.
Tim Burton review. And if you think about it, this is a weird movie that I had a whole Tim Burton review on.
Yeah, but I like doing that. Like, I like talking about a movie that doesn't get talked about as much from
An
a
Right.
outlier.
well-known
Yeah.
filmmaker. You
Yeah.
know, that's always a fun exercise.
Oh,
Everybody,
actually, no,
everybody
no.
talks about Edward
I
Scissorhands.
stand corrected. I
Everyone
stand
talks
corrected.
about
This is
Batman.
our second full-on Tim Burton review. Our first one was Sweeney Todd a couple of years ago.
Oh, I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, that's before
Wait,
you hopped on.
was I there for that?
No, with my friend from work, Tanner. That was
No, okay.
So we weren't on that then. So this is our first Tim Burton
Yeah.
movie.
Well,
to
technically,
review.
we talked about Ed Wood back in May.
That's true. We did talk about Ed Wood.
Yeah, but that
Which
wasn't a full-on
technically-
episode.
That's like a technicality. That's a technicality.
But anyways, speaking of Tim Burton, we got a little bit of a bonus for you guys before we wrap this episode up, and that is going to be our top 5 Tim Burton movies. And I'll start with you, Jackson. What is your top 5?
All right. Number 5, I'm going with Frankenweenie, not the animated version, the original live action short, which clocks in at about half an hour,
Okay.
that he made for Disney in what year was that? 1984.
Mhm.
So he was just fresh out of their animation department.
Mhm.
And it's wonderful. We watched it. I remember I took a college class where we were studying like horror literature and we were reading Frankenstein. And so the professor, as sort of a fun lark, decided to show us Frankenweenie in class one day. And it just really captured my imagination. It's shot in black and white, very much in the style of old like sci-fi and horror and
Shelley Duvall's in it.
and me being such a dog lover that I am, you know, it really struck me because when the dog dies, I'm just so upset by it.
Right.
And, you know, the little kid inside of my heart is just like, yeah, I want to resurrect my dog from the dead. It's really wonderful. The animated version is also pretty good, but something about just the sort of rawness of the original live action short really speaks to me. All right, so number 4, I'm gonna go with Edward Scissorhands, which I know is gonna come up on y'all's lists. I know it's on Drew's list. It's number 1 on Drew's
Probably
list.
number 1. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Maybe not.
It's beautiful. It's a wonderful film. I love the satirical nature of it.
Yeah.
This is back when Johnny Depp was still really good and stuff. Winona Ryder's awesome. I love her.
I think he had a similar career path to Burton, where he just did like these weird, like offbeat projects, and then
he got really famous.
Yeah,
You know, he did Pirates of the Caribbean, and it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, and I love Jack Sparrow, but I think
he's great.
And I love some of his performances after that. Finding Neverland, probably one of my favorite Johnny Depp movies.
I don't like that movie.
Really?
I
Dude,
don't
that
like
movie
him in
made
it
my mom
either.
cry. That is one of those movies when as soon as it starts and my mom is watching it, she starts crying.
That movie, I remember going to see that in the theater because that was like, I think the year after this one. I think it was 2004.
I think it was 05, 04, 05.
I know I was in
It was
college.
after Pirates. It was after Pirates, yeah.
Even young me was like, this movie is really just way too sappy. I don't like this.
Well, fuck you, Jackson. I love it.
I know. Number 3 is Sleepy Hollow.
Ooh, good one.
Which is a really underrated flick. Like, it's really cool because it's Tim Burton working in like R-rated, more horror, like direct horror, you know? And he just understands the assignment, you know? Got the Headless Horseman cutting off heads. And that's what
he
the
made
movie
a
is.
Hammer horror movie, essentially.
A what? A Hammer horror? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a lot like one of those. Yeah. Number 2 is this movie, Big Fish,
Okay.
which that one and Sleepy Hollow, I think you could probably flip flop
Mm,
any given day. I just chose today to make Big Fish number 2.
right.
Uh, and we've already talked about it all night. So,
Mm.
number 1, of course, is The Great Ed Wood.
Yes.
It
That's
is
a good movie.
just his absolute masterpiece.
Yeah. That's
he
my
totally-
favorite Depp performance of all time.
It's
Of all
amazing.
time.
It's amazing. It's this wonderful story about sort of misfits finding each other and making terrible art together, but it's okay because
Mm,
it's theirs. It's always going to be theirs.
right.
And,
And they
you
made
know,
it.
you
Yeah.
look into the real history of Ed Wood, and it's not that squeaky clean and nice.
No.
It's a little bit more sorted than all of that. But
Right.
for the purposes of a movie, it's pretty much perfect.
What about you, Eric? What is your top 5, Tim Burton? And that's a good list, by the way, Jackson. What is your top 5, Eric?
I'll breeze through these because we touch on a lot of the
Mm.
same ones. My number 5 is a weird choice, and I would say it's a guilty pleasure, but I think I like it too much to consider it guilty. And I think Jackson, you told me guilty pleasures are for cowards once.
Yeah,
it's just a
they
pleasure
are.
of mine. I love the movie Mars Attacks.
Okay.
some
Oh,
reason.
that's a good one.
Somehow
'Cause it
knew
is-
that's what you were going to say.
It's so weird, and it doesn't work in a lot of ways, but it's so just oddly inventive in some ways,
Yeah.
and just stupid.
And much
I don't
like
know. I love
Oppenheimer,
Mars
all of
Attacks.
Hollywood's in it.
Oh, everybody.
Loaded
Yeah.
cast, absolutely loaded cast. But yeah, Mars Attacks. I love Mars.
And
Attacks.
Slim Whitman wins the day.
Yeah. My next one up is Edward Scissorhands. We talked about it. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It may be his like best movie in some ways. As far as like combining sort of like the stuff he does really well and being
Mhm.
sort of like the broad appeal of him. But it's like 4th on my list. It's okay. It's a movie that I watch maybe once every 5 years and go like, this is really good, and then I don't watch it again for
Yeah.
another 10 years. Number 3 is a movie that I watched when I was really young. It may have been too dark for me as a child. And I don't know why Disney Channel would run it back then, but it's Frankenweenie, the short you were talking about. Because I watched it when I was like 8 on Disney Channel and loved it. It was so good. And it's a short and it's great. And it's because I'd seen Frankenstein at that point. Because it was just they'd show reruns of all these Universal horror movies and everything. And so I don't know, just scratched an itch for a young me. That's still good. I have it on VHS somewhere. It's great. Number 2 is
Thing
Ed
is
Wood.
the dog is not a weenie dog.
No,
Really?
The dog's
absolutely
a bull
not. It's like
terrier.
it's like a yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So that all makes no sense. Okay.
My number 2 is Ed Wood, and it's
Yeah.
maybe a perfect movie. But it's not number 1. It's perfect movie for all the reasons that Jackson just listed. But my number 1 is a movie that a lot of people hate, but technically is a perfect screenplay. They teach it in a lot of screenwriting classes,
Mm.
and it's Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, God. Why?
I love it
Not
so
Stan
much.
Pee-wee Herman.
I love it so
Not
much.
Stan
It's so
Pee-wee
good.
Herman.
It's so good. Just a cable knit.
Why was
sweater
that ever
keeps knitting
popular?
and knitting.
Why was that ever popular?
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I don't know. It was the 80s. The 80s were
It's the
really
80s.
Yeah, it was a very
time.
cocaine-induced time. But no, I don't. Yeah, I can't stand that. But I'm glad it's on your list.
It's a movie that Maggie hates, or doesn't necessarily hate. She's just like, I don't want to watch that. And I'm just like, it's Pee-wee. We will watch it.
That's a good list. Now I do love the Frankenweenie sort. I like it better than the animated version.
Mhm.
But I only stuck with feature length movies,
Mm.
or else Frankenweenie would be my number 4.
I almost put Vincent on there. Did you ever see
Okay.
Vincent?
No, I haven't. I need
It's
to.
it's a short he did around the time. I think it's the one that got him fired from Disney.
No, it was
about like
Frankenweenie.
kid who's obsessed. Are you sure? I'm pretty. I may have been Vincent. But hey, either way, like
It's Frankenweenie.
he's a kid who's obsessed with Vincent Price. It's really good too.
Yeah, I didn't want that one. That's on the Nightmare Before Christmas Blu-ray. And if you guys are wondering why that is not on anybody's list, he did not technically direct that movie. He produced
No,
it.
just
Story.
wrote the
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
and designed the characters. Yeah.
But technically, you just said Tim Burton movies, and you didn't say directed by Tim Burton movies. So we could have.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyways, here's my top 5. Number 5, Sweeney Todd. I think it's his last really good movie. I just think
Yeah.
Johnny Depp brings the
Mhm.
swagger.
I don't know.
of
I really like
Mhm.
Mrs. Peregrine. That's an underrated little movie.
Okay, I haven't seen that one,
It's good.
yeah, but he also brings a lot of menace to the performance too, which I love.
Hmm.
Number 4, Edward Scissorhands. We already talked about it. It's his absolute masterpiece. Number 3, nobody put this on their list, but I'm gonna go Beetlejuice, the
Hmm.
movie that made him not necessarily like a big name, but like got his name out there in the ether.
Yeah.
Um,
Certainly wasn't Pee Wee, which is what he made before.
well, that was kind of a cult movie that got more beloved over time, I feel like.
Sure.
But this
I mean, he
movie,
made his money back.
yeah. But this movie, I just love it. It's just fun. It's just a fun take on the afterlife. And all the different like little gags that happen throughout it. Number 2, Ed Wood. We already talked about it. Don't need to talk about it anymore. And number 1, we all know is coming.
Yeah.
It's gonna be one of these two movies because I'm such a big fan of this character and this whole world. And it's gonna be Batman Returns.
Well, at least you
Mm.
picked the better of the two.
Yes,
Tim Burton
absolutely.
Batman.
We actually agreed on
I was
something
afraid you were
there.
going to pick the first one. I just hate
Yeah,
that
I
one.
used to really like the first one over Returns, but over the years I really like Returns. Um, and it's not his best movie by far. Like I said,
No.
it's either Ed Wood or Edward Scissorhands in my opinion. But
Mhm.
this is my favorite Tim Burton movie.
It's the less compromised of his two
Yeah.
Batman movies. Like,
Yeah.
it's him really just doing his thing. Whereas the
Mhm.
first one, like, I like Prince, but those songs don't belong in a Batman movie. Like,
Well, I
it just
love those
doesn't make
songs, and they definitely belonged in that
Really?
Batman movie.
Ugh.
Really feels shoehorned in.
But no, anyways.
But I kind of love it because they feel shoehorned in. I don't know. It's a weird mix. Like the movie is just like its own pop cultural.
Yeah,
little-
I feel like that feels more of
whatever
his
it is.
time. It feels more dated than this one. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think why Batman Returns
absolutely.
is my number 1 favorite Burton movie is because it's Batman. It's him going full Tim Burton mode, and it's
Yeah,
set
for
during Christmas time in the winter. And there's something
Mhm.
aesthetically I just love about all that. And
Plus, Danny DeVito just
oh, you want to talk about perverted character? He made
playing the grossest character that's ever
he
been
made
put on screen.
Beetlejuice out to be like Mother Teresa or something like that. That's how gross Danny DeVito's Penguin is.
Him eating
in
that
this
fish
movie.
and then biting that guy's nose.
Can at least
Slits rent-free
Beetlejuice,
in my
as
brain.
gross and perverted as he is at least fun in a way. Like Danny DeVito's Penguin, it's just gross
Yeah, you kind of want to hang out with Beetlejuice, but
Yeah.
for a day.
you not want to hang out with the Penguin.
No.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, guys, that was our Big Fish review and our top 10 Tim Burton movies. If you like this episode and you want to see more spooky and weird content, make sure you slash that subscribe button and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, X, and Spotify at Horror Sci-Fi and Beyond. And also, don't forget to leave this episode a killer comment and give it a King Kong sized thumbs up.
What about a big fish size thumbs up?
Oh yeah, give it a big fist size thumbs up. And never forget, guys, to stay weird and happy Thanksgiving.